Welcome to the Conquer Food podcast with Craig and Paula Williams, where we share tips, tricks and strategies from the coalface of the weight loss industry in the UK. We're going to help you to think, eat and move better. Ultimately, we're going to help you finally gain control and conquer food. Hey up and welcome back to the Conquer Food podcast. I've got some incredible guests with me today. Anyone know where they are? I'll use you three until they arrive. No, I've got a real good, knowledgeable and very knowledgeable panel of weight loss and fitness experts with me. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I'll get them to talk about themselves. Straight in front of me, I've got Priya, who is a former long-term bootcamper, now head of sales at TEAM Bootcamp. She talks to more people that want to lose weight, that need to lose an extreme amount of weight than anyone I know probably. You know, she's constantly on the phone, listening to people's problems, you know, listening to the emotions behind, you know, the way people are feeling. So that's Priya. We've also got Paula, who's the co-founder of TEAM Bootcamp and has coached probably thousands of people over the last 10 years through her work at TEAM Bootcamp. She founded the Conquer Food program about 7 years ago, I think it is now. Appeared on the BBC documentaries, all sorts of stuff. So she's going to be throwing in her knowledge and expertise. And then I've also got Smudge, who is the current Conquer Food lead coach on the Conquer Food program. He's coaching people. He really is on the coal face of extreme weight loss at the minute, you know, getting into people's minds, looking at their habits, their thoughts, their beliefs, and helping them fundamentally change who they are. So he's going to be throwing in his bit of expertise as well. So that'll do, wouldn't it, for intros? Do you think? Yeah. Anything I missed?
Spot on, no.
Apart from your piercing blue eyes, Smudge? No?
It's changed into brown today. Just to,
piercing brown
in case
eyes.
you get recognised.
Right, no, I don't want any talk about brown eyes on this podcast, okay? We do like a little bit of blue, but that might be a little bit too much. Okay, so we've got, over the next couple of weeks, we've got some great podcast topics that are coming up. And today, what we want to talk about is how to motivate yourself to keep going when you feel like giving up. Now, Priya, just from your experience, how many times do you talk to people that have kind of phoning because it's last-ditch effort, you know what I mean? It's like now or never, I've had enough, I can't get going, you know, and what kind of things are they saying to you? And what I'm really trying to do is create a picture so that people watching and listening to this can kind of resonate with what we're talking to.
There are so many people that call in with that specific reason. They've actually in the past maybe lost weight and then they lost motivation and now they've gained all the weight. They're calling because they don't know what else to do. A lot of people struggle with the idea of where do I go? What do I do? How do I even get started? And I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear consistently is what do I need to do to get started? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm at home. I'm just gaining weight. And I think for everybody that's out there that's, you know, struggling with motivation, it really is the first step of picking up the phone, knowing what you want to do, understanding that there is help as well. And I think people that have previously lost weight and then gained the weight and then now lost motivation because they've put all the weight back on, for them, they know what they need to do, but they kind of need a kickstart as well. So when they speak to someone who can relate to them, that makes a massive difference as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strange, for me, you know, we've all got our own little points that we're going to talk about sort of throughout this episode, but there's a couple of things like, I find it unbelievable sometimes. And I've done this myself, you know, where it's like, I don't know how to get started. And it's like, well, I've lost weight before. Should you not just do the same thing again then, you know? It's bizarre. Maybe Smudge, you can kind of explain a bit of that. And then the other thing as well is like, you know, if you're on the verge of like giving up on trying to lose weight, well, you know, what's the alternative? Like both are hard, aren't they? Both are shit. Like getting yourself sorted takes a bit of hard graft, but living life, you know, overweight, all that is tough as well. So, right, so let's kind of throw it up and see. No, don't throw it up. That's completely different. Let's throw it out. Throw it out there.
One thing that I would say is we talk about losing weight. initially, I think, forget about that, because when you're in a state of not feeling particularly good about yourself, it's really hard to make positive decisions for yourself. And so I think what happens is we lose our mojo. So the first thing to ask yourself is, why, where am I going? What do I want to do? What's the biggest reason for wanting to lose this weight? And because I think we tend to fail if the reason for wanting to succeed isn't greater than the reason for eating bad food, if that makes sense. So you've got to really generate some excitement and a real reason for wanting to make a big change. And I think that's one of the key things that Smudge works on. I don't know whether you agree with that, Smudge. You know, when you're talking to people, is that reason, that why. You know,
so you're talking about creating like a big why. And you want the desire to be better. It needs to be stronger than the need to.
100%. And the amount of times, and I'm sure Smudge will agree, I don't know, but I've said to people, where are you going? What do you want? Well, I don't know. Well, it's like setting your sat nav for take me anywhere. Yeah. You know, how can you get to a destination if you don't know where you're going? And I think that's the biggest thing.
So it sounds like what we're talking about here is like one of the initial steps for getting motivated is just getting a bit of clarity on what you want to do and sort of establish some goals and reason, you know, and reason
get
why.
Get excited. Yeah. You know, start changing.
I mean, but playing a bit of devil's advocate, like when someone's in the depth and they're perhaps overwhelmed and they've tried everything and all this kind of stuff, like that kind of positive can, you know, it's hard to listen to, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, fucking hell, oh yeah, I wish it was just that easy. Oh yeah, create some goals, that'll be it, that'll sort it all out. So
one of the things that I truly believe, and some people will want to punch me around the head for saying this probably, is that if you are not succeeding, it's because you don't want it enough. And that doesn't come from a textbook, that comes from personal experience. Because at the end of the day, if you want something badly enough, you will achieve it. You will have it. You've just got to want it. You've got to want it more than anything else.
When you decide to come on a course like this, it's you've already started to make that choice to change anyway. Even looking to come somewhere like this as opposed to just signing up. It's that first thought you've had to go, I need something different. And knowing that in the past when you've done something and you got over a problem, you can apply the same principles again. So definitely, it will. Yeah. Once you've learned that why, and it's not always about information, it's implementation of. And once you get past some of those hurdles that society puts on us, or parents, or friends, or adverts, then you can definitely get that bigger why and start to move forward. From my experience. So, I mean, how does someone? We talk about, like, you come to camp on the Conquer Food program, you know, and we are going to do this for you. You know, we get you going. You know, we're going to get you some really quick, rapid results. We're going to really start digging into your mindset. But imagine like people at home now, like how can they turn up that desire? You know, they might sit there going, well, I do want it, but their actions suggest something different. So what, like, quick, easy things can they start with? Is the rituals, is the things that you've taught in the past that have helped other people? For me, it's probably things like affirmations, or at least sitting down and looking back over times when you have achieved things. And once you realise that you have in the past, you can never turn around and say that you can't again, or that you haven't. And once you start telling yourself the things that you have done and can achieve, it starts to become the normal program that you sort of to train your RAS, your reticular activating system, to look for on its own. And that then will start to do that for you.
So it's, I think, what
habit forming.
Just kick a load of stuff on the table. What I'm kind of picking up there is, like, we often think with motivation that, you know, we just want to wake up, like, go in our pocket, all right, I've got some motivation, but it doesn't always work. In fact, motivation comes after your first bit of action. You know, it's a feeling that follows. If it came first, like when I go out running, the last thing I want to do is step outside when I go running. I just hate that, but I know once I get running, I'll be okay, and it can be a case of, you know, just getting those first those first steps going, and you've got to recognise those steps from what you're saying there, you know, by saying those positive things, and
I think some of it comes from the Amazon culture as well. You go online, you think you want something because you've seen it. Go online, book it, and have it. Whereas obviously years ago, you do research into it, you process between getting it delivered and.
Well, 28 days, remember that? And cereal packets allow 28 days for delivery. Jesus Christ.
10 weeks for your new sofa.
What? Well, they're still like that now, isn't it?
But actually, Smudge, that leads really into what I was saying, and something that I'm really, really into at the moment is taking responsibility for yourself.
Oh, that's because there's a lot of dishes in there.
Of course. But I think for so many people in the culture that we're living in at the minute, everyone is expecting other people to do things for them. And I don't think that's a criticism to people individually. I think it's just how society's moving. And I think when we wake up in the morning, we're unhappy, we have to take responsibility for our happiness. We have to take responsibility for our life. And if you really want to lose weight, you ask yourself the question, why? Because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And then as Smudge said, look back in your life at times when you were happy and what was going on in your life, what was the environment like, but take responsibility for it.
No one's going to come along and do this for you.
No one is going to knock on your door and all of a sudden cut your fat off. It's
whole new concept.
Yeah, I mean, even coming to camp, we can guarantee you weight loss if you follow the program. But you've got to do the steps. You've got to throw yourself into the one-to-ones. You've got to throw yourself into the training.
100%. And an example of this is there was an article written recently about boot camps, which was directed at us. It was directed at us, and it was that it went along the terms of I lost weight when I was at the camp, and I became very fit when I was at the camp. But then when I went home, life hit me like a roller coaster. Well, everything that you're taught on the Conquer Food program teaches you how to deal with life when you go home. And that is a classic example of somebody not taking responsibility for themselves. I think the key that I'm saying, the point that I'm making is this is your journey. It's your responsibility. And as Smudge said, do your research. If you're feeling really unhappy, then go back to basics. Write a list of the things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things I work on is choice.
Yeah.
His ability to make a choice that will serve your purpose, as opposed to now where you get inundated by, you should do this, should do that, so-and-so said you should do this, and this advert says that, this advert says that. One of the biggest things I look at is responsibility, how not to be in that sort of that victim mentality where you're blaming society, blaming culture, blaming Facebook, which all have the algorithms, to get you in. And then looking at when you leave in 12 weeks, you can eat the foods that you've learned to eat, but make good choices when you need.
Yeah. I think actually what you guys are touching on is how I felt before I came to camp. Before I came to camp, I was in a state of, I did blame everybody else. I blamed society. I blamed the culture, everything, why I was so big and overweight from childhood. And then honestly, it sounds really strange, but it was one day I just woke up and I thought about all my accomplishments at the time of the career, at the time of how I felt internally. And I loved that feeling. And the only thing that I didn't feel good about was actually myself. I had achieved all these goals, yet the one thing I didn't feel good about was actually who I am as a person, and physically how I looked as well. It played a massive part. The only reason I got motivation is because I realized that I had the ability to change it, and actually only I could change it. So there was no one else. We have trainers at camp, we have everyone chefs. So before I got here, I didn't realize the extent of how much the Conquer Food program works. But for me personally, I didn't realize that all of this was the ability of myself. I could do it myself, and putting in the effort and actually picking up the phone, knowing what I wanted to do, coming to camp, training, really hard, but putting in the effort, not because I felt like I had to, but it's actually because I wanted to. I wanted to change. I wanted to be the best version of myself and actually feel really happy. So I know sometimes and a lot of people don't have that motivation because they're lost or they don't know where they are. And when you're stuck in kind of a rut and you blame everybody else, it will take a lot longer. When you start understanding that actually you can do it, it will happen like that.
One thing that we'll look at during the 12 weeks is your values, which is the reason why you do what you do and don't do what you don't do.
Yeah.
So as you talk about what you did then, what's like the biggest value that changed? What's the biggest value that you realised you had that you developed back? So there's things for some of the campers, it's self-worth, it's getting that self-belief back, happiness, sense of achievement, sense of belonging maybe. So back at you, what was the value that?
I think for me, in all honesty, it was a lot to do with self-worth and happiness at the same time, because I didn't feel worthy of my achievements because I didn't feel good internally. And that came from what I was eating, how I was, not exercising or walking or anything like that. So I didn't have any motivation to want to get up and do anything because I didn't feel, first of all, like I could. I didn't have any kind of, I don't know what the word is, but anything that I felt valued that I could actually do these things, not that I could achieve them. I couldn't actually physically do it myself. And I wanted to get a sense of actually, I can do this. Like, this is me. This is my achievement. So a lot of it came from wanting to have that self-worth and happiness and actually be happy. And I think that was a kickstart to motivating myself, knowing what I wanted to achieve. So, yeah.
I think it's really difficult, and there'll be people listening to this, that you get stuck on this kind of hamster wheel of, you feel low, your self-worth is low. So one of the key things with that is you lack energy. So when you're lacking energy, your body will crave crap food. So you'll eat the crap food. It makes you even more depressed. It depletes more energy. And you get stuck in this cycle. So it's really difficult. And I know there'll be people listening now saying, yeah, well, you say that, but it's actually really tough. And it is really tough. And I have said so many times and will continue to say, I know that, not from a textbook. I know that because I am a food addict and I am a drug addict. I don't suffer from those things anymore, but in the terms of those things I am. And I understand how difficult it can be, but I also understand that you have to find some fire in your belly and go, enough is enough. That's it. I'm not doing it anymore. And that's where that reason that I said earlier comes from. You have to have a desire. Some people they're becoming grandparents and they want to be able to run around with their kids. For a lot of mothers, it's the same thing. I need energy to run around. You've got to find that fire in your belly.
There's been a couple of campers that have, the reason I've wanted to come is because they can't keep up with a 4-year-old son who's living at the beach.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so key, because I can guarantee if you don't want it badly enough, when you're on your own, when you're back with no one to be accountable to, you'll fall back into your old habits.
A lot of it can start with your language. If you're, I want to lose weight, and then the next word is but. But I've got a heavy weekend this weekend, but I've got friends coming around. But do you know what? I'll start in January because I've still got 3 months to go, and it's built up to Christmas, and or I should do this. So and so said, I should. As opposed to turning around and saying, well, I want to lose weight, and what I can do. Just the ability to change your language will start to change your mind, the story you tell yourself. To look forward as opposed to look for excuses. You say, I'll start Monday.
Yeah, and with all these things, when we're talking about motivation, and with all these things, you can't just wake up tomorrow and be an absolute, fitness addict and, food guru and all this kind of stuff. So just no, sorry, you can't smudge. Yeah, no, wrong podcast.
It takes time.
Yeah, but you start small, and going back to the self-love, there's a great exercise I've had people do in the past, and that's the 30-day self-love challenge, right? It's not locking yourself in a room with an industrial-sized tub of baby oil and some Kleenex. Again, wrong podcast. What it is, you start off, and day one, you look in the mirror and you just find something. It might be a freckle, it might be your hair, it might be your teeth, it might be something, and you just sort of say to it, look, teeth, I love you. And it sounds really petty, but it's just about finding something. And then day two, you got to find something else. And there'll be something else, well, actually, I quite like my elbow. It might be something small. And then day three, you find something else and you keep going. And for some people, this might be really, really tough, but eventually you're going to work out that actually there's loads of part of me that,
I think it's allowing yourself to as well. I used to find it as a coach so heartbreaking when people couldn't find anything about themselves to love. But you know what? There's lots of people out there that love you, and there's something about everyone to love, and you've got to find it. You haven't got any choice. Because otherwise you get stuck in this, there's nothing about me to love. And it's that victim mentality again. And whilst ever you're being a victim, change just won't happen. It's, I feel a lot tougher now. I think
let's throw this out. So how do people know when they're in like a victim mode, victim mentality?
I don't think they do straight away. Yeah. I think it takes, because
what I'm saying is how would they identify it? You know what I mean? What could they ask themselves, or analyze and sort of think, "Fuck, I am."
What you saying to yourself? What you're saying out loud? What you're saying to others? Are you saying it's X's fault that I can't do this? It's so and so's fault. It's my job. I just haven't got any time of the day. And if you start to recognise the language that you're not taking ownership by, saying, "Do you know what? I need to go and do something," and that's, for me, that's what I notice. Work on the Conquer Food program is the story they tell themselves day in, day out, is blaming the others, and that's when they start to recognise it.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you see it in others, you can spot that victim mentality in others. If you just take a step back and just have a look at what's being said and listen to what's being said and how it makes you feel when you hear it. Ask yourself if you're saying the same thing, and how do you feel it's what you're telling your mind. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to say. I think, just stop and reflect on how you see the world, because you see what you feel. And so when everything is doom and gloom, everything is people are doing this, people are doing that, everything, everything's miserable.
What do you expect, COVID?
Yeah,
what do you expect?
Yeah.
The war,
Yeah.
what do you expect?
Yeah.
Somebody
Cost of
else's
living.
fault always.
I think that was a really hard lesson for me personally, to learn that I created my reality, and how I was feeling would be reflected in the life that I lived and how people spoke to me and responded to me. So I think, and I also think, we have a lot of people at the minute suffering from mental health problems and depression, and there is I've never met anyone, someone will come back and tell me, but I have never met anyone who's depressed, who sees the world as a wonderful place, because that's what it does to you. Not all depressed people blame everyone else, but they can be a victim of themselves. So what they do is they self-criticize, and so then they become their own victim, if that makes sense, not a victim of other people, but a victim of themselves. And I think once you recognize that, then there's so much support, to help you through that process. But awareness is key. I don't think people start to heal until they're aware of.
So how do they raise? This is obviously a loaded question.
Yeah.
But, how do people raise their awareness of the positive things they do or the good things in their life? Let's go for 3 different ways. See how we get on with that. Hey, you didn't think of it being a quiz, did you?
Gratitude. I'm going to get out before anyone else gets it.
Okay, so how's that?
I mean, gratitude is amazing.
But how do people practice gratitude? Tell me how
It's
to
as
do it.
easy as, every night, put a notepad next to your bed.
Yeah. Is that it?
Every
Nailed it.
single night before you go to sleep, just one thing you're grateful for, you know, and once you get into it, it's everything, you know, even the sunshine and everything.
Yeah, and I think it's key, like, don't, when you're first getting started, don't think I'm grateful for the roof over my head, but that sounds silly. It don't matter, you know. Just get it down there. Yeah. Okay, we've had one. That's a belter. Well done. We can all do that
I
now.
did nip that in because before it was top one.
The others.
So the real gratitude one is
Gratitude Mark 2.
one of them is spotting in somebody else their bad language. I don't mean swearing and so on and so forth, but that when you spot that, if you don't want to be around people, what is it about them that you don't like? What are they saying? And maybe just having a bit of an introspective look and thinking.
Well, you say it's like almost identifying your own blind spot or your own.
And it'll start to fester over time, and you don't go out to earn a bad habit. So to learn a new one takes time and effort, and that sometimes is a difficulty in doing it. Whereas doing it every single day, it just starts that process off, and like I mentioned before, your RAS, your reticular activating system, will start to do it for you.
And it's you know, tagging those things, tagging your gratitude to habits that you already have. I mean, I snuggle down into bed every night and say, thank you, universe, for it's habit now. I don't ever not do it. It's just part of the course. And sometimes it's the most random things.
Like what?
I'm not going to say. I wanted to know too.
Involves goats.
Yeah, loads of goats.
Lots of goats.
Goats, dogs.
Yeah.
I think another one for me is to spot. On top of that, is to then go and spot in the good stuff in people.
Yeah,
because it's what you see in others, you reflect in yourself, and it's you can't help but see it in others if it's not in yourself. And then when you start to recognise it and go, actually, why do I spot the happiness in that person? Why do I spot that people want to be around that person, or they're saying good things? And there's something inside you that will notice that and focus on it. And that's a pretty powerful one for me and the clients I work with.
Yeah. I think I was going to actually touch on what you've already said, is self-love. And I think it's really important affirmations that when you tell yourself that you're, you know, good at something, or you appreciate something about yourself, I think that's such a key start, because it gives you that confidence to be like, I love myself because of this, and your list just starts growing. So that's definitely
but you've got to do it.
Yeah, you got to do it. I mean, to be honest, you know, we have a gratitude journal, little diary worksheets that I'll add as a little download to this podcast. So, you know, go down into the description or whatever, and you can download that. And the key with that is it doesn't just say, okay, what was the best thing you experienced today? Because quite often, you know, if someone asks you a question, you search for the best, but it doesn't need to be the best. It just needs to be something, you know, and that's how you get started. What a lot of people have got now that are listening to this is they've got momentum in the wrong direction. Now, to gain momentum in the opposite direction in a positive manner is a bit like turning a North Sea ferry. You know, you don't just whack the handbrake on, skid it round, and then full steam ahead towards positivity. You've got to slow it down and gradually turn it, and it can take a bit of time. But, you know, expect it to take a bit of time, but it'll probably, if you put it into practice and be consistent with it, it'll take less time than you think. You know. Yeah,
it's if where you are is so low for yourself, then looking at a goal that's too far away could be just as overwhelming as not even facing the goal in the first place. So the small goals of just, to use your metaphor, is slowing the boat down for starters and starting to turn it, and then giving yourself smaller goals to work off, which is how the 12 weeks works, is also paramount. I think people you see a lot of memes on Instagram and just chase your goals and just do this and just do that. But for some people, they're so far away, it's even more overwhelming. So smaller goals and thank yourself on the way, and that helps with gratitude as well.
Yeah. Right. Let's just touch on a little bit of like the actual giving up side of things. You know, I mean, and what does it, you know, if the thought of people out there so low and struggling so much that, you know, they're on the verge of like giving up, whatever that means to them, you know, and I'm sure there'll be people at all different levels of like giving up, you know, just headlong into freaking eating whatever they want, maybe even, you know, harming themselves, God forbid. Well, what kind of things come to mind there, and what would you say to to those people?
I think that the first thing I would say to somebody is if you fall off the wagon, don't beat yourself up about it. You're a human being. And one of the things that I think is really key for anybody that overeats or for anybody that uses anything to make themselves feel better, it's just a form of self-soothing that doesn't serve you well. And actually that's a good thing. You know, it's a survival. We're human beings. We'll look to survive. We'll instantly try and make ourselves feel better when we feel uncomfortable. That's part of being human. So I think the key thing is recognize that you've played out something that doesn't ultimately make you feel better. Accept it. Be aware of why you don't want to continue to play out this behaviour and move forward. It's a process. And that process can take years. And it's like Smudge said earlier about the whole Amazon thing. People want it. And if we don't get it, sorry, that's my clicking finger.
Oh, is you clicking? I was like, I just want to kick the door. Jesus Christ.
If we don't get it instantly, we feel frustrated and then give up. And that's society's teaching us that behaviour. And actually it's not. It's a lifelong commitment to being and living the best version of yourself. And it's empowering and it's rewarding, but it takes work. And it takes work every day.
Just give yourself a break.
Yeah.
You don't paint a wall in one stroke. You know, it's one of those where just give yourself a break. And like saying about the negative mind, if the mind's already looking for the negative and you're feeding it, then it's going to find it even easier to find it. So give your mind a break by looking for some good stuff. And just when you're aware of something's not right, then that's when you should start thanking yourself, because that's you going,
yeah, exactly.
Recognising this, and once you've recognised it, then you can't not recognise it, so you can only move forward.
Cool. Right, we're going to start wrapping up now. I just want, imagine you had a person in front of you. What would your message be to that person when they're sort of saying, I'm struggling and I feel like giving up? What would you say? Get them going. You know what I mean? And
recognise you're struggling. Recognise you're struggling so you can do something instead of just sit at home not recognising it and just say, well, look, now you've recognised it, let's do it. Let's go fishing, put the rods in the water.
Yeah, that's a good one. People sort of say to Priya, you sure you get this all the time? I've tried everything, but you haven't been to camp yet. You know what I mean? So there is stuff out there, and so keep going, keep getting, get the rods out and see what bites.
Remember the times where you've done well, when you've achieved and you've actually gone, I was good at that. And then rewind that and keep playing that over. Definitely.
Yeah. And know that you're worth fighting for.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You've got two choices. You continue to live the life that you're living. That's your choice. Or you make a choice to make a change and be the best version of yourself. Now that's short term the hardest of the two choices. And that's ultimately why people struggle, because it's hard work. But once you push through, and I say to people, the only way through is through. Once you push through, you come out the other side a different, more empowered person. So that choice is yours. That choice is yours. I heard a really lovely quote a little while ago, and it was, because there's a lot in the media, social media at the minute, about trauma, and not just what we would consider to be huge traumas, but micro traumas, things that leave an open wound and happen continuously throughout our life, and it happens to all of us. And the quote is that the likelihood that the cause of your trauma wasn't your fault, but the responsibility for healing is yours. And that's it. That's it. You can write as many books and as many whatevers as you want, but ultimately you have a choice, and you only have two. You're at a crossroads. It's up to you.
You can't solve the problem with the same process that caused it, and everybody at some point in life has solved a problem.
Yeah.
So look back and have a look at when you've solved a problem and work out once you've solved it, you've not got that problem again.
Yeah, and you are worthy. Everybody, every single person, their human right is to be happy and to experience joy and experience love. We have to experience sadness. We live in a world of polarities. So we need balance, and that's everybody's right.
Yeah. And I think that to know that it's okay if you're struggling. It is okay. It is normal. We're all going through things, and it's okay to know that you're not the only one, but you do have a choice. You can be happy. You can feel that self-worth, that self-love, and small steps at a time, one at a time, and you'll get there.
Yeah. The final thing from me is, I have, and everybody tell me, how many people have you seen change their life around?
Loads.
Loads and loads. And they're people, you're a person too, that means you can change as well. So keep going. Right. I've quite enjoyed that. I'm going to bring it to an end. Just a little bit of a look forward to. So our next episode, we're gonna change the topic, and we're going to talk about like how to lose weight when you're struggling with binge eating. So we're really going to dive down into kind of binge eating, talk about our experiences helping people with that, and giving some tips and advice to help people with it. So thanks everybody. Say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you for listening.
Say again.
Ciao.
Ciao. And what?
No.
Oh, we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.